All right, thank you. Now, previous lecture में we had talked about the consequences of the establishment of Turkish rule, and today we will talk about the important rulers and their contributions. Right? Now, the time period of the Delhi Sultanate is from 1206 to 1526, around 300 years, wherein sultans from 5 different dynasties held the throne, beginning with the Mamluk dynasty, also known as the Tilbury Turks. (1206 to 1290), followed by the Khiljis, time period from 1290 to 1320. They were followed by the Tughlaqs, (1320 to 1414). The fourth dynasty were the Sayyids, (1414 to 1457), and finally the Lodhis from 1457 to 1526. Okay. Now, for each of these dynasties, there were a number of sultans. A few of them were important from our perspective. For example, for the first dynasty, the Mamluks, we will learn about Qutubuddin Aibak, Iltutmish, Razia Sultana, and Ghiyasuddin Balban. Among the Khiljis, the most significant one was Alauddin Khilji. Among the Tughlaqs, we have two important personalities, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, followed by Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Among the Sayyids, we have the founder, Khizr Khan. And among the Lodhis, the activities or contributions of all the three sultans, that is Bahlol Lodi, Sikandar Lodi, and Ibrahim Lodi, they become significant, right? तो इन सुल्तान्स के बारे में हमको थोड़ा डिटेल में देखना है. Now, obviously, among them, some of them are going to be less important, some of them are going to be more important. Now, first, we are going to talk about Qutubuddin Aibak. He was Sultan only for 4 years, but the peculiar thing about him is that he is not considered to be the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate, although he was the first among the slaves of Ghori to have a separate existence from the capital at Ghur. right? Now, he was a slave of Muhammad Ghori. इसको स्लेव डायनेस्टी गलत बोला जाता है एक्चुअली, ठीक है? Although these were slaves, they were not ordinary slaves. So in the Islamic world, the institution of slavery was a little bit different from the institution of Western slavery. Now, in the Islamic world, there were two different kinds of slaves. One known as the Mamluks, and the others known as Gulams. While Gulams were the ordinary personal slaves, Mamluks were the capital slaves. They served their master in non-personal capacities, such as administration and military service. Okay? Now, the owners of Mamluks were also people of high rank, including military generals, important ministers, influential scholars, notable clergymen, and in some cases, even the king or the sultan. Now, whichever field their particular masters were associated with, the Mamluks used to assist them with that, right? So, if the owner, the master was a general, probably the chances were that the Mamluks are going to be well-trained soldiers. If they were ministers, they would assist their master in his ministerial and administrative responsibilities. If they were scholars, then the slaves would serve as apprentices. इनका पर्पस क्या होता था, इनका फ्यूचर क्या होता था? That after the death of their masters, they were generally granted freedom automatically. They were also given a portion of their master's property, and in some specific cases, if the master died without an heir to inherit his property, if for example he died only with female children, then one of the slaves is going to marry one of the daughters of the master, inheriting his property and in some cases even his rank and titles, right? Now, throughout their careers in service to their masters, these slaves were being groomed for leadership later on in their lives, right? So they form the younger cadre of the administrative, military and intellectual machinery of the Sultanate. तो ये रोल प्ले करते थे. Now, to simply call them as slaves would be diminishing the importance that Mamluks had within the entire architecture. ठीक है? So they were not ordinary slaves; they were capital slaves who were groomed for command from the very beginning. Clear? Now, one such slave of Muhammad Ghori was Qutubuddin Aibak. He had assisted Muhammad Ghori during his conquests and had earned a place of high trust in the eyes of the Sultan. Towards the later portion of his reign, when Ghori had already completed his conquest over North India, Aibak was made the governor of Lahore, right? And after the death of Ghori, his empire fell into disarray because there was no clarity on who is going to become the next sultan. So the empire splintered into three portions. Similar to Aibak, Ghori had also installed two other governors in other power centers, घूर में और मुल्तान में. घूर में ताजुद्दीन यल्दोज, मुल्तान में नसरुद्दीन कुबाचा, right? And as a result, soon after his death, all three of his governors declared independence. So Aibak also declared independence after Ghori's death. And continued to control his North Indian territories from his seat at Lahore. However, he did not have the opportunity to consolidate his position as he died suddenly after falling from a horse while playing polo. Polo को चौगन बोलते थे. So while he was playing chaugan, he fell from the horse, got injured, and died a few days later. Okay? And in the eyes of the contemporary scholars as well as the modern historians, Aibak is not considered to be the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate. Now, there were a few reasons for this. First of all, his position was not legitimate. It had not been legitimized. Why? Because firstly, he had not received any manumission. Manumission is the act of granting freedom to any slave. Okay? And in the Islamic theory of kingship, a slave can never be a sovereign. Right? So although Ghori had died, Aibak had not been formally manumitted. Therefore, he was not a legitimate ruler. Secondly, he had not applied for and neither had he received any investiture from the caliph. So from a theological point of view also, he did not enjoy legitimate authority because every legitimate sovereign must be accepted by the caliph as his legal deputy. इसके पास caliph का ये recognition नहीं था. Thirdly, now it was a common practice for every new sultan, as soon as he came to the throne, as soon as he sat on the throne, to issue coins in his own name so that his name would be generally known in the populace, so that his authority would be legitimized in the eyes of the people. However, Aibak did not have the opportunity to issue any coins in his own name. Similarly, it was also a common practice to have the name of the Sultan spoken in the khutbah portion of the Friday prayers. और खुतबा होता क्या है? जो फ्राइडे प्रेयर्स का preambular portion होता है, that is known as the khutbah. Now the prayer itself, the main portion of the prayer itself might be delivered in any language, but the khutbah is generally delivered in Arabic only. And one small portion of the khutbah is dedicated to giving thanks to the prophet, to the caliph, to the sultan, and all other important historical or present day Islamic personalities, right? So for a sovereign, it also has a very important symbolic importance, that if his name is spoken in the khutbah, then the general population recognizes him as the legitimate ruler. But his name was never inserted into the khutbah. Aibak's name was never inserted into the khutbah. Further, even during the Delhi Sultanate, the scholars did not recognize him as the first Sultan of Delhi. Now, over the centuries, a number of historians recounted the history of the Delhi Sultanate beginning from the beginning to the very end. And obviously, chronicles में किस तरह के details होंगे? Chronological details होंगे, where importance is going to be given to the activities that took place during the reign of each and every sultan. So when it comes to the historians of the Delhi Sultanate, including Barni or Ibn Battuta or even later rulers such as Firoz Shah, Tughlaq, etc., they did not consider Aibak to be a sultan. Barni, Ibn Battuta, as well as Firoz Shah Tughlaq all prepared their own lists of all the sultans of Delhi. And वहां पे सब में किसका नाम एक्सक्लूड किया गया है? ऐबक का नाम एक्सक्लूडेड है, उसको नहीं इंक्लूड किया गया है, राइट? फर्दर, ऐबक himself never assumed the title of Sultan. He never referred to him as Sultan. ठीक है? So why should later historians consider him to be the Sultan? Moreover, to be the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate, Aibak must have done some things, committed some acts, made some decisions which would qualify him for that position, for that title. However, he did not have the opportunity to lay a strong foundation to the Delhi Sultanate. First of all, he was unable to eliminate his gubernatorial rivals, right? That is Yildiz and Kubacha. Secondly, he was also unable to completely distance India from Central Asia. That means, in the eyes of his contemporaries, India, even at this point of time, was simply a conquered territory of Central Asian rulers. अपना खुद का कोई independent वजूद नहीं था, right? So he had not been able to establish Delhi or North India, Hindustan, as an independent entity. It was seen very much a part of the Central Asian Turkic world. Clear? Thirdly, he was unable to introduce any meaningful administrative reforms to give his administration the necessary stability. He did not have the opportunity to introduce any economic reforms or institutions. He was not even able to bring the entire area of conquest in North India under his direct control. So it was not he who came up with any arrangement for provincial administration. Although the empire had been established on the basis of military might, Aibak did not have the opportunity to even introduce a standing army. And general consciousness mein, what was the new political center of North India under the sultans? Which city? Delhi. Naam hi Delhi Sultanate hai, Delhi Sultanate hai, right? However, he did not move his capital to Delhi, continued to remain in and operate from Lahore as his operating base. So he did not transfer the capital to Delhi. And therefore, in the eyes of his contemporaries as well as modern historians, he is not considered to be the legitimate first sultan or the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate. So question arises, who then is actually considered to be the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate? किसको कंसिडर किया जाता है रियल फाउंडर? अगला वाला कौन रूलर आया? Iltutmish. Iltutmish is therefore considered to be the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate. Now take down a question. Is it correct to state that Qutubuddin Aibak was not the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate? 150 words, 10 marks. इसका आंसर लिख लो, राइट डाउन. कुतुबुद्दीन ऐबक the first ruler of the Mamluk dynasty began his career as a slave of Muhammad Ghori. Full stop. Through his military and administrative skill, he earned the Sultan's respect, leading to his elevation as the governor of Lahore. Leading to his elevation as the governor of Lahore. Full stop. Next paragraph. Following Ghori's death, Aibak declared independence, establishing his own dynasty. Full stop. However, contemporary and modern scholarship unanimously agrees that he should not be considered the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate. Full stop. This is due to the following factors. वन टू थ्री फोर करके लिख सकते हो. नंबर 1, Aibak was never formally manumitted. Which is necessary to become king under the Islamic Shariat. शरीयत का मतलब लॉ होता है, ठीक है. अंडर इस्लामिक लॉ he did not have the right to become the ruler. Number 2, right to become king under Shariat. ठीक है. Number 2, he never received The investiture of the caliph. The investiture of the caliph, thus lacking religious and legal recognition. Thus lacking legal and religious recognition. Number 3, no coins were issued in his name, comma, a common symbol of sovereignty. Full stop. Number 4, similarly, his name was never inserted into the Friday khutbah. Number 5, Sultanate period scholars such as Barni, Ibn Battuta, and Firoz Shah Tughlaq excluded his name from the list of the sultans of Delhi. Next, Aibak never formally assumed the title of sultan. कितना हुआ है? 6 हुए हैं. नेक्स्ट पैराग्राफ लिखो. Most importantly, comma, Aibak did not have the opportunity to provide a strong foundation to the Sultanate. A strong foundation to the Sultanate. Once again, sub points 1, 2, 3, 4 करके लिखो. At the time of his death, comma, Yildiz and Kubacha continued to threaten North India. Number 2, Aibak was unable to break away from Central Asia's political and cultural influence. Full stop. Thus his domain was very much a part of the Central Asian world, a part of the Central Asian world, and lacked an independent status. Number 3, he did not bring about any meaningful administrative reforms. Thus, his domain did not have the necessary institutional skeleton required for longevity. LONGEVITY. Longevity मतलब long, having a long life. ठीक है, longevity or independence. Next, कौन सा number 4? Number 4. Similarly, his provincial system was also not institutionalized. Thus making the peripheries or the peripheral region vulnerable to frequent revolts. Number 5, Aibak could also not introduce any significant economic reforms, which would provide financial and political stability. Next, number 5. Number 6. देखो, although Turkish rule had been established due to military superiority, Aibak had no opportunity to reorganize the army. Full stop. The Turkish military, the Turkish military in India was fragmented under individual commanders and the Sultan lacked military supremacy. Lacked military supremacy. Number 7. Finally, Aibak continued to operate from Lahore as his headquarters. Never as his headquarters, never transferring the capital to Delhi. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट लिखो, और सॉरी नेक्स्ट पैराग्राफ. Before Aibak could leave his mark on Indian history, he died suddenly in 1210 after just 4 years of rule. Full stop. Therefore, it fell upon Iltutmish to provide a strong administrative, economic, military, and cultural foundation to the new Sultanate. Therefore, it would be accurate not to consider Aibak to be the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate. ठीक है, आई नो कि 150 वर्ड्स में नहीं लिखवाया है, बट इस तरह से आप लोग को लिखने की प्रैक्टिस करनी चाहिए. वी हैव अ क्लियर बिगनिंग, अ क्लियर एंड, एंड बीच में मैसेज एकदम क्लियर है. कभी हमने जो क्वेश्चन है उससे डिविएट किए हैं कहीं पर? हम नहीं किए हैं, राइट? सो द नैरेटिव इज गोइंग टू, जो आपका आंसर का नैरेटिव है, that is going to stick very closely to the demands of the question. That was my purpose in giving you this model answer. Now, some important activities which did take place during the reign of Qutubuddin Aibak related to construction. तो कुछ मॉस्क का कंस्ट्रक्शन हुआ और कुछ मॉन्यूमेंट्स का कंस्ट्रक्शन शुरू हुआ. The first mosque in North India constructed by the Turks, the Qutub-ud Islam Mosque. कहां पे लोकेटेड है? at Mehrauli in Delhi. Second mosque to be constructed by the Turks, the अढ़ाई दिन का झोपड़ा, located in Ajmer. And another monument whose construction began, which became the living symbol of the sultans of Delhi later on, the Qutub Minar, also located at Mehrauli. ये जो दो मॉस्क्स थे, how was their construction carried out? Were they built as new projects from the ground up? No, they were constructed from the rubble of destroyed temples. Quwwatul Islam Mosque was constructed on the site of a former Vishnu temple, Vaishnavite temple, which itself earlier used to be a Jain temple, right? After the Turkish victories at Delhi, this temple was destroyed, and by using the rubble coming from the destroyed structure, this new mosque was constructed, known as the Quwwatul Islam Mosque. तो कभी देखा है, गए हो यहाँ पर? नहीं? If you go there, you will find that if you look at the pillars, so they are distinctly Indian in nature. तो वहां पे आपको लोटस का मोटिफ मिल जाएगा, स्वास्तिकास मिल जाएंगे, chains मिल जाएंगे, you will get Indian flowers, Indian leaves on those pillars, even on the walls. Some of these symbols you are going to find. But another very distinct feature of Indian architecture, especially the sculpture on the architecture, is idols, human and animal images being found. ये मिलेगा आपको यहाँ पर? नहीं मिलेगा. Why? Because they were not accepted within Islam. It was prohibited to depict any living being, that means an animal or a human. So all those idolatrous portions were destroyed, and the other portions which were non-idolatrous, that were incorporated into the new structure. So Quwwatul Islam Mosque, the first mosque to be constructed by the Turks in India. Adhai Din Ka Jhopda at Ajmer, the second mosque to be constructed by the Turks while in India. Now, while the Quwwatul Islam Mosque was a repurposed Vishnu temple, the Adhai Din Ka Jhopda at Ajmer was a repurposed Buddhist vihar. Right? Now, it also suffered the same fate as that Hindu temple in Mehrauli. ठीक है? Third important monument to be constructed, or whose construction began, the Qutub Minar. Named after whom? Not Qutubuddin Aibak. It was named after a Chishti Sufi saint. Qutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki. Qutubuddin Aibak was a follower of Qutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki, and in his honor, he began the construction of the Qutub Minar. Okay? What is the purpose of the Qutub Minar? क्या पर्पस था कुतुब मीनार का? बताओ। अरे डेडिकेट किया था तो वाज इट अ रिलीजियस स्ट्रक्चर? नहीं, इट वाज नॉट अ रिलीजियस स्ट्रक्चर, राइट? तो क्या था? अरे क्यों बनाया होगा, क्या लगता है? हम्म। किसके लिए? मतलब सूफी सेंट्स के लिए? नहीं नहीं, हिस्टोरिकल इम्पैक्ट आप बोल सकते हो। तो इट वाज सिंपली अ victory tower. It was supposed to symbolize Turkish and Islamic victory over North India. Okay? That now we are here, we have won, and we are not going away. During the reign of Qutubuddin Aibak, while the construction began, it could not be completed. Only one story of the Qutub Minar was completed before Qutubuddin Aibak died. And it was completed. कितने माले हैं कुतुब मीनार में करेंटली? गए नहीं हो, फोटो तो देखा होगा ना। कितने स्टोरीज हैं? देर आर 5 stories, बट व्हेन इट वाज कंप्लीटेड फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम, it was completed only with 4 stories. Under whose reign? Under Iltutmish. Now, Qutub Minar, after its completion, became the tallest structure in the Delhi skyline. And during the rainy season, जब बादल गरजते थे, बिजली कड़कती थी, तो it would always attract a lot of lightning strikes. Therefore, it always got damaged repeatedly. Now, in one such lightning strike, the top story was destroyed and it was repaired with 5 stories under Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So Firoz Shah Tughlaq, while repairing it, decided to, instead of repairing one big story at the top, divide it into 2 smaller stories. तो एक ही जगह पे 2 कर दिया. Thus today the Qutub Minar has 5 stories and not 4 stories. क्लियर है? तो ये था important developments during the reign of Qutubuddin Aibak. Now नेक्स्ट इंपॉर्टेंट रूलर कौन है? इल्तुतमिश. टाइम पीरियड 1211 to 1236. When did Qutbuddin Aibak die? 1210. इल्तुतमिश कब बना राजा? 1211. तो बीच में कुछ और हुआ होगा. क्या हुआ? As soon as Qutbuddin Aibak died, some of the powerful nobles who were power hungry decided to install one of his useless sons to the throne at Delhi. The name of that son was आराम शाह. ठीक है, अब नाम से ही समझ में आ रहा है कि एकदम नालायक है ये, राइट? So he was a weak ruler. And under Aram Shah, what is going to happen to the empire as a whole? It is going to weaken, start breaking apart. Revolts and rebellions are going to sprout up. Economic instability is going to be there. Political uncertainty is going to be there. So his reign witnessed a deep crisis. And in times of crisis, क्या होता है? There is a great opportunity, right? chaos is a ladder, and जो opportunistic लोग होंगे with the capability and the will to act, it is the best time for these people. Now, a former slave and later son-in-law of Qutubuddin Aibak, whose name was Shamsuddin Iltutmish, saw the opportunity before him. He was associated to the former sultan through marriage also, and the ruler was extremely weak and unpopular. Gathering the support of the military and some other powerful Turkish commanders, he overthrew Aram Shah and assumed power as the next Sultan of Delhi in 1211. Now, both the contemporary as well as modern historians consider him to be the first real Sultan of Delhi. So they all consider him to be the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate. हाँ, कुतुबुद्दीन ऐबक का ही सन था आराम शाह. He was killed and replaced by Iltutmish. Now, before we can appreciate why he was considered to be the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate, let us look at the challenges that he faced when he came to the throne. तो क्या challenges हैं? अभी हमने जो लास्ट क्वेश्चन कवर किया था उससे क्या समझ में आया था? Did the Delhi Sultanate have any element of permanency? या फिर वहां पे सब कुछ टेम्पररी था? सब कुछ टेम्पररी था. Qutubuddin Aibak, although he had ruled for 4 years, had not had the opportunity to provide a solid grounding, a solid foundation to the Delhi Sultanate. So the responsibility of providing a proper administrative, economic, military, and cultural foundation to the empire in its state of infancy fell upon Iltutmish. Okay? And what kind of a political situation, economic situation, administrative situation, and military situation had Iltutmish inherited? A stable one or a position or a situation of deep crisis? क्या इनहेरिट किया था इसने? सब कुछ स्टेबल था या फिर सब कुछ उथल पुथल हो रखा था? There was great deal of instability, chaos. आराम शाह के रूल में there were a number of rebellions. कई सारे nobles जो थे they were disgruntled. So there was a deep crisis as well. Right? A number of rebellions had broken out. There was a great degree of financial stress. Further, by the beginning of the 1220s, a new threat had appeared on the western horizon, right? So from Mongolia, Genghis Khan had consolidated power. He had already conquered northern China. He had defeated the Khwarezmian Empire. He had conquered the whole of Persia and Arabia. And next, he was about to enter the field in India. Had he actually entered India, the Delhi Sultanate would have been snuffed out in its infancy. It would not have been given a chance to find its feet and prosper. Okay? So the Mongol threat was also there. Now, although the whole of North India had been brought under Turkish control during the reign of Muhammad Ghori himself, there was no sense of cohesion in the different parts of North India, right? So Punjab से लेकर बंगाल तक की जितनी भी जमीन थी, that was under the rule of local governors, having very little to do with each other, barely recognizing the authority of the Sultan. ठीक है? And therefore, the need of the hour was to provide a provincial system to replace the provincial, you can say, instability. Further, there was no proper military, तो military का reorganization करना था. The central administration lacked any proper institutional mechanism so that the Sultan could distribute powers, could devolve administrative responsibility upon ministers. So that new arrangements had to be made. There was no formal system of taxation, and to ensure the flow of finances, flow of revenues from the vast and fertile landmass of North India towards Delhi at the center. तो ये सारी चीजें करनी थी. The foreign rivals of the Delhi Sultanate were still very much alive, still conspiring and challenging the authority of the Sultan at Delhi. तो उनको eliminate करना जरूरी था, right? So all these other challenges also had to be overcome. ठीक है? Now, before we discuss the solutions provided by Iltutmish, इसको लिख लेते हैं जल्दी से. Write down. Give the heading Iltutmish 1211 to 1236. He is considered to be the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate. Of the Delhi Sultanate. And is, same point me, and is credited with providing a strong administrative, military, economic, and cultural foundation to the empire, in its infancy, to the empire in its infancy, INFANCY, while protecting it from internal and external threats. तो Full stop. Next point. After the death of Qutubuddin Aibak, some ambitious nobles placed his weak son Aram Shah on the throne. Subpoint. However, Aram Shah was an unfit ruler, and the political situation quickly degenerated, leading to corruption, chaos, instability, and fragmentation. Next main point. Sensing the opportunity, comma, Aibak's former slave and son-in-law Shamsuddin Iltutmish lobbied the support of important commanders and nobles to topple Aram Shah, TOPPLE, to topple Aram Shah and ascend, ASCEND, and ascend as the new Sultan in 1211. Full stop. Next point. However, he needed to overcome major challenges to consolidate his power. Major challenges to consolidate his power. Now give the subheading: Challenges before Iltutmish. Write down. to appreciate the achievements of Iltutmish, we must be aware of the challenges that he had to overcome. Write down number 1. Aibak had died without consolidating the foundations of the Sultanate. Next, number 2. His sudden death had thrown the empire into disarray. Number 3. The weak rule of Aram Shah had encouraged rebellions from ambitious Turkish nobles as well as Rajputs. Subpoint. Many Rajput states had successfully rebelled Next subpoint. The governor of Bengal, his name was Iwas Khan. The governor of Bengal, Iwas Khan, had declared independence. And had began calling himself Sultan. Next, number 4. The arrival of the Mongols. On the northwestern frontier threatened to snuff out the newly formed Delhi Sultanate. Number 5. The external situation was further complicated by Yalduz and Kubacha. याद है ना ये दोनों? by Yildiz and Kubacha. अगला point number 5, 6. Number 6. Sit down. The administrative, provincial, and revenue systems lacked the element of institutionalism. Thus, imparting a sense of administrative uncertainty. Next, Iltutmish also needed to gain legitimacy and distance the Turkish power in India from the Turkish power in Central Asia. From the Turkish power in Central Asia. Next, the financial position of the state needed to be strengthened quickly. To provide stability. Next, the balance of power needed to be carefully, the balance of power between the Sultan and the nobility, needed to be carefully managed. And finally, last वाला लिखो. Political stability needed to be ensured by establishing a permanent system of dynastic succession. कितने challenges हुए हैं? 10. क्या क्या है? क्या बोल रहे हो? नहीं सुनाई पड़ रहा है कुछ. साफ बोलो और एक वर्ड में बताओ क्या क्या है. समराइज करो. हाँ. तो Aibak had died the sudden death and administrative system exist ही नहीं करता था. That was one thing. दूसरा challenge, डिसअरे हो गया था, केओस हो गया था. उसके बाद तो एक्सटर्नल थ्रेट इमर्ज हो गए थे, इंटरनल थ्रेट्स इमर्ज हो गए थे, रिबेलियंस हो रहे थे. व्हाट एल्स? वही एक्सटर्नल थ्रेट. तो वो ताजुद्दीन यल्दौज, नसरुद्दीन कुबाचो आल्सो फर्दर कॉम्प्लिकेटेड इट. व्हाट एल्स? हाँ, तो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में कोई इंस्टीट्यूशनलिज्म नहीं था, वो प्रोवाइड करने की जरूरत थी. व्हाट एल्स? हाँ, तो सुल्तान का अपना कोई लेजिटिमेट एग्जिस्टेंस नहीं था इन द आईज ऑफ द इस्लामिक वर्ल्ड, द कैलिफ एंड द पीपल. दैट नीडेड टू बी इंश्योर्ड. एक अपना सेपरेट आइडेंटिटी, separate from Central Asia, that needed to be carved out. What else? Financial position को strengthen करना था, to bring about political stability, economic stability. What else? The balance of power between the Sultan and nobility need to be carefully managed in the Sultan's favor. And finally, political stability के लिए dynastic succession को ensure करना था. Right? So these were the challenges Iltutmish faced. Now we are going to look at his response. So give the next subheading. Iltutmish's response. Now, what was the first order of business? सबसे बड़ी प्रायोरिटी क्या थी? कि अंदर जो आग लगी है उसको बुझाना है, right? A number of Rajput states had rebelled. They all needed to be brought back under the rule of the Sultanate. ठीक है? So write down. Soon after coming to power, comma, Iltutmish began a military campaign against the Rajput states, leading to the speedy subjugation of Kannauj, Badaयूं, Badayn, Badaयूं, Banaras, Katihar, Kaatihar, Katihar, Ranthambore, and Jalore. ठीक है? Next point. Similarly, the reign of Iwas Khan नहीं था, तो Iwas Shah was brought to an end bringing Bengal back into the fold. ठीक है? तो internally सबसे पहले तो all the rebellions were silenced. Next point लिखो. Following this, Iltutmish transferred the capital from Lahore to Delhi. इसका सिग्निफिकेंस क्या था? लाहौर वॉज अ फ्रंटियर रीजन, तो बाकी जो टर्क्स थे यल्दूज एंड कुबाचा, दिल्ली वॉज बेटर प्रोटेक्टेड फ्रॉम देम, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल. Secondly, by increasing the physical distance between Central Asia and the Sultan at Delhi, he was also trying to assert his independence from the Turkish heritage. ठीक है, तो ये दो अलग अलग चीजें होंगे. Write down. With this, the Delhi Sultanate began a new chapter. Next point लिखो. He also eliminated his Turkish rivals, Yıldız and Kubacha. Through a series of conflicts. In which he displayed the highest level of tactical ability and diplomatic skill. ठीक है. So all these three were fighting against each other. तो इल्तुतमिश ने पहले क्या किया? He joined hands with one of them, Yıldız, in order to knock out Kubacha. And when Kubacha had been knocked out, then he moved against Yıldız. ठीक है. So that is how he eliminated the Turkish competition. Next point, write down. To provide the element of military supremacy, he introduced दो नए रेजिमेंट्स इसने बनाए, 2 new bodies of troops. हम पहले भी डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. डू यू रिमेंबर द नेम? एक रॉयल बॉडीगार्ड था और एक एलीट कैवलरी यूनिट था, सर जहांदार और हश्म ए कल्ब. He introduced the Sar e Jahandar, within brackets, Royal Bodyguard, and Hashm e Kalb. Hashm e Kalb. Hashm e Kalb, within brackets, elite cavalry unit. And later on, these units are going to be expanded. These units are going to become the core of the future permanent standing army. Full stop लिखो. Thus, हश्म ए कल्ब के बाद thus he provided the core of the future standing army. ठीक है. Now Was the Delhi Sultanate prepared to actively resist the power of the Mongols at this point of time? आमने सामने की लड़ाई करने के लिए तैयार थे, केपेबल थे? नहीं थे, क्योंकि अभी हमने देखा है कि बहुत सारा क्राइसिस चल रहा था, वीकनेस चल रहा था. एंड सेकेंडली, the Mongol Empire was also on an upward trajectory at this point of time. The Mongols were only expanding in power and reach. So the two sides were completely unmatched. So in that scenario, Iltutmish displayed once again his diplomatic genius. He was able to avoid any contact, any conflict with the Mongols through the use of his diplomacy. Okay, so write down. Next point. The Mongol threat was neutralized by adopting a policy of avoidance. A policy of avoidance. Now, we have to separately talk about the Mongol policy also, तो उसमें ज़्यादा डिटेल में देखेंगे. But generally speaking, बता देता हूँ आपको. The Mongol policy of the Delhi Sultans can be divided into 3 phases. एक historian है के निजामी, उन्होंने ये मॉडल बताया है. First phase, the policy of avoidance, also known as the policy of aloofness. Second phase, the policy of resistance, and third phase, the policy of offense. ठीक है, तो इन 3 स्टेजेस में दिल्ली सुल्तान्स की मंगोल पॉलिसी को डिवाइड किया जा सकता है. ड्यूरिंग द फर्स्ट स्टेज, द सल्तनत वाज क्वाइट वीक, मंगोल एम्पायर वाज एट इट्स स्ट्रॉन्गेस्ट. During the second stage, there was a parity, and during the third stage, while the Mongol Empire was disintegrating and shrinking, the Delhi Sultanate was expanding and stabilizing. So it was becoming relatively stronger. Okay? So in accordance with the times, the successive sultans of Delhi adopted different postures against the Mongols. And by and large, they were able to prevent any major invasion of the Mongols. थोड़े बोटे invasions होते रहे. In fact, the Mongol menace continued to be a headache for the later sultans. However, any large-scale invasion similar to the ones that Rajputs had faced during the period of Muhammad Ghori, वैसा invasion नहीं हो पाया, leading to the supplanting of the Sultanate power by the Mongol power. तो वो नहीं हुआ. ठीक है, तो पहला स्टेज क्या लिया है? Policy of avoidance. With this, Iltutmish was able to prevent the invasion of Genghis Khan with his forces in North India. क्या एपिसोड हुआ था? आइडिया है कोई? तो देखो, Genghis Khan was expanding his power in Central Asia and Persia. तो सेंट्रल एशिया और पर्शिया के ऊपर रूल करने वाला एक मेजर स्टेट हुआ करता था, known as the Khwarezmian Empire. Right? Khwarezmian Empire was attacked. Its sultan fled towards the Caspian Sea and died on an island in the Caspian Sea. ठीक है? Now, the symbolic power of the entire Sultanate came onto the head of his successor. उसका नाम था प्रिंस जलालुद्दीन मांगबरनी. Right? Now, Prince Jalaluddin Mangbarni, till he remained alive, he would always serve as a banner to the Turkish people, to the Persian people, to the Central Asian people, around which they could gather and begin to resist the Mongol advance. तो उसको eliminate करना एक बहुत बड़ी priority थी चिंगिस खान के लिए. However, Mangbarni had fled and he had come first towards the Hindu Kush. Then he had come a little bit south, Punjab. In Punjab, he had crossed the Indus River and he was marching towards Delhi. इस पूरे दौरान the Sultan of Delhi was getting active reports from his ambassadors, spies. Even the prince's entourage was sending him successive appeals that you provide me refuge, you provide me military assistance against the Mongol invader. I am a Muslim prince, you are a Muslim prince, it is your duty to support me. Right? इस तरह की अपील्स कर रहा था. इल्तुतमिश ने क्या किया? Very politely he refused. That शहजादा बहुत ठंडे खुशनुमा मौसम से आया है, उसको दिल्ली का मौसम राज नहीं आएगा. So I suggest कि जहां से आप आए हैं वहां वापस चले जाइए. Now, during this period, what was Chinggis Khan doing? He had come to the mouth of the Indus and he had camped over there, right? He was waiting and watching what the Sultan of Delhi is going to do next. Now, in this scenario, had Iltutmish given the necessary political asylum and military support to Mangbarni, Chinggis Khan kya bolta? That the Sultan of Delhi is hostile against me, he is my enemy, thus I must eliminate him also. जो ईरान में और सेंट्रल एशिया में हो रहा था खून खराबा, वो इंडिया में भी होता, राइट? सो थ्रू दिस पॉलिसी ऑफ अवॉइडेंस a conflict, a direct conflict and Mongol invasion was avoided. Clear? Next लिखो. हाँ, next main point. अब देखो, internal और external military threats को that they have been dealt with. Military strengthening has also been carried out. What is the next priority? Administrative institutionalization, right? So write down. Iltutmish provided an efficient administrative structure to the state. Now, he established what is known as the Turkane Chihalgani, also known as the Chalisa. In English, it is often referred to as the Group of 40. क्या था ये? It was a group of the closest, most reliable and most skillful slaves of Iltutmish, right? Now, he had come to power when the Sultanate was surrounded on all sides by enemies. There were enemies within. There was a deep crisis also. तो ऐसे में मेजर एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग पॉसिबल नहीं होता है. Now, the daily, everyday essential items of administration, they need to be dealt with at the time, and at the same time, जितने भी challenges हैं, they need to be overcome. Therefore, एक temporary administrative arrangement किया है इसने in the form of the Turkane Chihalgani. All the important administrative responsibilities were simply given to the individual slaves of the Sultan. And since these were slaves of the Sultan and they depended upon the good graces of the Sultan, they were always going to remain loyal to him. Secondly, यहाँ पे और क्या दिख रहा है? ये Turkan element, right? That means all of these slaves were of Turkish origin, right? So there was also a sense of ethnic cohesion. The Sultan was relying upon his cultural linkage, cultural relationship with the Turkish slaves to rely upon their support, to rely upon their loyalty. Okay? And this was the new arrangement that he introduced. So write down. सब पॉइंट इसी में. अभी क्या लिखा है आपने? To the state in the form of the Turkane Chihalgani or the Chalisa or the group of 40. सब पॉइंट लिखो. Iltutmish devolved the duty of day-to-day administration to his most trusted and capable slaves. Most trusted and capable slaves, known collectively as the Chalisa. Known collectively as the Chalisa. Full stop. Next sub point. Since these slaves depended upon the Sultan for their position and power, comma, they remained completely loyal to him. Remained completely loyal to him. Next sub point. Another bond connecting them to the Sultan was their common Turkish ethnicity, or was their shared Turkish ethnicity, जो भी लिखना चाहते हो. Now, यहाँ पे एक डेंजर भी था. क्या डेंजर था? सुल्तान को क्या डेंजर हो सकता है इस तरह के सिनारियों में? सी, ये जो टर्क्स हैं, all of them have a single ruler, the Sultan. Now, if one of them was to become over ambitious and begin conspiring against the Sultan, तो ऐसे में क्या होगा? He may be able to convince a major chunk of the slaves that the Sultan is not a good master and that you will be better under me. And since the Sultan and the ambitious slave share the same Turkish blood, तो यानी कि यहाँ पे legitimacy वाला भी claim नहीं हो सकता है. So it would be easier to organize a rebellion, an internal conspiracy against the Sultan because of the shared Turkish heritage. ठीक है? What it can further do is split the Turkish nobility into two, right? तो एक पार्टी सुल्तान के फेवर में, एक पार्टी दूसरे उसका जो प्रिटेंडर है, opponent है, उसके फेवर में. And in this scenario, what may happen? Another ethnic group may take advantage of the internal divide. तो इससे सुल्तान का नुकसान तो होगा ही होगा, टर्किश पीपल एंड टर्किश एथनिसिटी का भी नुकसान होगा इसमें, राइट? एंड देयरफॉर in order to overcome such kinds of pressures, often the medieval sultans relied upon checks and balances, right? Now, how to keep the Turkish slaves in check? कौन चेक करेगा इनको? इनकी पावर को, इनके एम्बिशन को कौन रिस्ट्रेन कर सकता है? तो सुल्तान कर सकता है, बट सुल्तान का पावर भी लिमिटेड ही होगा ना. तो चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस का ये मतलब होता है कि दैट the Sultan should not be in a position of permanent tension with his nobles. Rather, the nobles should feel ingratiated to the Sultan. A reciprocal relationship can develop between them. ठीक है? तो एक में तो competition हो रहा है पहले वाले relationship में, दूसरे वाले में cooperation हो रहा है. How to encourage the cooperation of the Turks? By giving some power and some high positions to another ethnic group. तो अब एक साइड पे टर्क्स हैं, and apart from the Turks, the Sultan also promoted a few Tajik slaves, ठीक है? So that if a chunk of the Turks break away from the Sultan's authority and try to erect a new political head, the Sultan can rely upon the Tajiks to cut their legs out from under them, to control them. ठीक है, तो दोनों को बैलेंस करने के लिए ये सॉल्यूशन निकाला गया. So write down, although sub point, although most of the members of the Chalisa were Turks, of the Chalisa were Turks, comma, Iltutmish also promoted a few Tajik slaves to introduce the element of checks and balances. To introduce the element of checks and balances. ठीक है, अच्छा. How to overcome the problem of balance of power with the nobility, how to overcome the balance of decentralized taxation, how to overcome the problem of ad hocism in the provincial system. तो उसके लिए एक solution निकाला गया. क्या? हम ऑलरेडी इसको देख चुके हैं. Provincial system, taxation system, nobility का system, that was to be managed through which new institution? The Ikta system, right? So write down the Ikta system. Next main point, the Ikta system was also introduced by Iltutmish. Also introduced by Iltutmish. Full stop. It served the following objectives. One, two, three. Number one, it aligned the interests of the Sultan with the interests of the nobility. कैसे? The more loyal the nobles are to the Sultan, the greater the size of their ikta, the greater their responsibility. तो एक काम करने से दोनों का फायदा होगा, right? The Sultan wanted to expand his territory. The Sultan wanted to increase his taxation. So greater the collection, more is the outlay. Greater the territory, more is the land that can be distributed as ikta. ठीक है? तो in one stroke, Iltutmish had transformed the possible opponents, that is the nobles, into his greatest supporters. Next, right, second. It also provided the basis for provincial administration and revenue centralization. जो बड़े इक्ताज होते थे वर दे सिंपली द parcels of land without any administrative responsibility, or did they also serve as administrative units? Administrative units, vilayat, muktai hote the, right? And over there the governors had a number of administrative responsibilities. रेवेन्यू रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी भी होता था, जनरल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन का भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होता था, और टैक्सेशन का भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होता था. देन यू रिमेंबर द इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ फवजिल. फवजिल क्या होता था? रेवेन्यू सरप्लस जनरेटेड इन ईच इक्ता, वो उसके ऊपर किसका राइट होता था? सुल्तान का. So this also provided the means for revenue centralization. How the revenue surplus could flow from the periphery towards the imperial treasury at the center through fawazil, through the ikta system. Okay. Number 3. It also provided the basis for the military consolidation of the entire area of conquest and future expansion. इसका क्या मतलब हुआ? जो इक्ताज थे, they were not simply administrative units or land revenue assignments. The iktadars also had military responsibilities. Every iktadar had to maintain his own garrison of soldiers, his own horses, camels, elephants. He had to equip his soldiers. He had to provide security to his area, defend against external and internal threats. Then these iktadars on their own initiative also attacked the neighboring territory that was not under Turkish influence, thus bringing new land within the Sultanate. तो इस तरह से पूरा का पूरा जो एरिया ऑफ कॉन्क्वेस्ट है पंजाब से लेकर बंगाल, दैट वाज फर्स्ट stabilized because of the permanent and widespread military presence. Secondly, it also provided the basis for further military and territorial expansion. ठीक है? तो without this इक्ता सिस्टम ये सारी चीजें नहीं हो पाती. तो क्या क्या पर्पस सर्व कर रहा है इक्ता सिस्टम बताओ? इट इज अलाइनिंग द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ द सुल्तान विद द नोबिलिटी. तो बैलेंस ऑफ पावर को करेक्ट करने का काम कर रहा है. दूसरा, रेवेन्यू सेंट्रलाइजेशन और एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सेंट्रलाइजेशन का बेसिक मैकेनिज्म प्रोवाइड कर रहा है. तीसरा, मिलिट्री कंसोलिडेशन एंड एक्सपेंशन का बेसिस प्रोवाइड कर रहा है. तो एक इंस्टीट्यूशन से 3 अलग अलग इंपॉर्टेंट काम हो रहे हैं. राइट. नेक्स्ट मेन पॉइंट राइट डाउन. Iltutmish also carried out major economic reforms in the form of the monetary unification of the empire. The monetary unification of the empire. Now before this क्या था? There was no monetary unity. That means in different parts of the Delhi Sultanate, different coins were being used. तो ऐसे में ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स अच्छा परफॉर्म कर पाएगा? नहीं कर पाएगा. एज यू टेक गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड देम इन डिफरेंट रीजन, यू वुड हैव टू गो टू अ मनी चेंजर. वो अपना कमीशन लेगा. हो सकता है कि सफिशिएंट अमाउंट में कॉइन्स भी ना मिल पाए, तो दिक्कत होगा. ट्रेड वुड बी सप्रेस्ड. राइट. मॉनेटरी यूनिफिकेशन की वजह से क्या होगा? The entire monetary system is going to come under a single regime. All the intangible monetary barriers to trade, they are going to be removed. स्टैंडर्डाइज्ड करेंसी की वजह से ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स इज गोइंग टू बी फैसिलिटेटेड. Standardized currency issued by a powerful sovereign is also going to encourage trader confidence, investor confidence. So people are going to be ready to invest their money into economic activities, right? ये सारे फायदे होंगे मॉनेटरी यूनिफिकेशन की वजह से. एंड इन दिस केस Iltutmish introduced two new types of coins, one known as the tanka, the other known as the jital. Tanka was the standard silver coin, jital was the standard copper coin, right? Now यहाँ पे एक और यूनिक फीचर था, क्या? That they were the first standard Arabic coins to be issued in India. तो इसके ऊपर इंस्क्रिप्शन लिखा होता था, किस लैंग्वेज में, किस स्क्रिप्ट में? अरबी स्क्रिप्ट में. ठीक है. इस पे कोई इमेज होगा? नहीं होगा. नहीं, सुल्तान का इमेज नहीं होता था बिकॉज इट वाज प्रोहिबिटेड अंडर इस्लाम, राइट? Generally verses from the Quran were taken and inscribed upon these coins. These coins all came with a date also, date of issue. They came with the name of the sultan who issued them as well. ठीक है. तो कई सारे एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव डिटेल्स हमको पता लगते हैं, कल्चरल डिटेल्स पता लगते हैं, क्रोनोलॉजी एस्टैब्लिश करने में ये कॉइन्स मदद करते हैं. ठीक है. सो दैट इज समथिंग न्यू. सिंबॉलिक सिग्निफिकेंस क्या है इस अरबिक करेंसी का? India में the new Turkish rulers, they were trying to establish a new cultural identity, right, as Islamic rulers of India. That is why now they decided to issue Arabic coinage and not simply verses of the Quran written in the Devanagari script on coins, right? वो भी कर सकते थे, but they decided to issue Arabic currency, thus trying to emphasize upon their status as मुस्लिम रूलर्स, नॉट कंप्लीटली इंडियन रूलर्स. तो एक नया कल्चरल आइडेंटिटी अपने लिए हिंदुस्तान के अंदर ये बनाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. ठीक है. राइट डाउन. इल्तुतमिश सब पॉइंट. इल्तुतमिश issued two new types of standard Arabic coins, a silver tanka and a copper jital. A silver tanka and a copper jital. Full stop. Sub point. With this standardization of coinage, trade and commerce could be revived in a major way across North India. Trade and commerce could be revived in a major way across North India. अगला पॉइंट लिखो. नेक्स्ट सब पॉइंट. These coins carried an Arabic inscription generally quoting the Quran along with the name of the Sultan and the date of issue. The name of the Sultan and the date of issue. Along with the name of the Sultan and date of issue. Full stop. Next subpoint. Therefore, it is of immense historical and cultural significance as well. Cultural significance as well. Next subpoint. It represented the desire of the Turks to assert their cultural heritage, and identity in India. ओके, ठीक है. अगला मेन पॉइंट लिखो. Iltutmish also became the first sultan to receive a letter of investiture, within brackets you can write Mansur, from the Caliph, following which he adopted the title Amin ul Momin ul Khalifa. AMIN, Amin ul Momin ul Khalifa. अमीन का मतलब होता है डेप्यूटी, ठीक है. सो दिस वाज द डेप्यूटी ऑफ द लीडर ऑफ द फेथफुल. So what was Iltutmish doing? He was legitimizing his role from a legal and religious point of view. ठीक है. Sub point. This secured legitimacy not only for Iltutmish but also for the office of the Sultan of Delhi. The Sultan of Delhi is a sovereign authority that was also recognized within the Islamic world through this. ठीक है. Okay. Next point. Next main point. A number of Islamic scholars, artists, architects, scientists, artists, nobles, and craftsmen were fleeing भाग के आ रहे थे from Central Asia and Arabia towards India. Due to Mongol invasions, And what was the attitude of Alauddin towards them? वेलकम किया, वापस भगा दिया? इनको वेलकम किया because they did not have any they did not pose any political threat to the Mongols. Write down sub point. Iltutmish welcomed them and patronized them heavily. And patronized them heavily. So what is going to be the result of this sudden influx of cultural personalities to Delhi at the same time? A lot of cultural effervescence is going to take place, and this is going to transform Delhi into the cultural center of the Islamic world. Okay, so write down. This resulted in this resulted in a remarkable cultural effervescence, transforming Delhi effervescence, EFFERVESCENCE, transforming Delhi into the cultural capital of the Islamic world. Into the cultural capital of the Islamic world. ठीक है? Is this clear? Sure. Next point लिखो. Next main point. The cultural roots of the Sultanate were further strengthened by ABC करके लिखो. A, the establishment of the cultural roots of the Sultanate were further strengthened through ABC. A, the establishment of 2 new colleges the Muizza College and Nasiriya College at Delhi. B, the completion of the Qutub Minar. C, the construction of the Hauz-e-Shamsi. And Hauz-e-Shamsi, construction of the Hauz-e-Shamsi and Agrasen ki Bauli, also known as the Gandhak ki Bauli. ठीक है? So this was Iltutmish's response to the various challenges that he faced when he came to power, and this is the way in which he consolidated his control over the Sultanate, laying down the real foundations of the Delhi Sultanate. Okay? So these are his great achievements, but his achievements also came with limitations. Haan ji. अग्रसेन वाज प्रॉब्ली अ कल्चरल पर्सनालिटी एसोसिएटेड विद दिस रीजन। बावड़ी तो पता है ना क्या होता है, एक स्टेप वेल होता है, तो वहां पे फास्फोरस पाया जाता था, तो दैट इज व्हाई इट इज नोन एज दी गंधक की बावली आल्सो। गंधक इन संस्कृत इज फास्फोरस। तो नेचुरली फास्फोरस हीट प्रोवाइड करता है, एक्सोथर्मिक रिएक्शन होता है व्हेन इट गेट्स डिसॉल्व्ड इनटू वाटर। तो उसमें कुछ मेडिसिनल प्रॉपर्टीज मानी जाती थी लोगों की। So it became a pilgrimage center as well as a cultural center. एक हेल्थ रिजॉर्ट टाइप का भी वहां पे इस्टेब्लिश हो गया। इट वाज आल्सो नोन एज द अग्रसेन की बावली। नाउ लिमिटेशंस क्या हुए? सबसे बड़े लिमिटेशंस क्या है? गो एंड लुक एट द चैलेंजेस एंड टेल मी कि कौन सा ऑब्जेक्टिव लॉन्ग टर्म में ठीक से फुलफिल नहीं हो पाया। During his reign, he was able to provide administrative, political, and economic stability, military strength. But what happened after his death? वो जो सिस्टम उसने क्रिएट किया था, did it continue to function as he intended, या फिर it disintegrated? It disintegrated. He was not able to secure dynastic succession. Very soon, the throne went out of his bloodline. Why? Razia Sultan, Nasiruddin, Mahmud, etc. They were all under the influence or being constantly challenged by the तुर्काने चिहलगानी। ठीक है, तो तुर्काने चिहलगानी was supposed to be a temporary arrangement। क्यों? क्योंकि यहाँ पर the each and every one of the slaves were having a personal relationship and personal bond with the Sultan Iltutmish, and as soon as the Sultan died, what is going to happen? All of them were given independence, and now none of them are going to act in cohesion. None of them are going to remain loyal to the next Sultan, because they are now independent, and since they have had an opportunity for around 30 long years to sit and occupy the same position within the administrative hierarchy, so they have carved out, you can say, an autonomous zone within the administrative structure for themselves. Are they going to give up power? Voluntarily तो नहीं देंगे, right? Rather, they are going to challenge the authority of the next ruler. They are going to further minimize their power in order to expand their own power. So, while the Turkani Chihelgani was able to provide administrative and political stability in the immediate term, in the long term, it proved disastrous. It proved to be like the Frankenstein's monster for the future sultans of Delhi. एक तो ये प्रॉब्लम था। दूसरा क्या था? Through the Ikta system, Alauddin wanted to align the interests of the Sultan with the nobility. लेकिन यहाँ पे एक मिसकैलकुलेशन हो गया था। क्या? He had underestimated the ambition of the Turkish nobility, right? Now, गलती क्या करी इसने? That he had associated the element of reciprocity to loyal service with land, right? और लैंड अगर आप किसी अपने बाशिंदे को, किसी अपने एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर को या फिर नोबल को देते हो, तो अलोंग विद लैंड कम्स टैक्स, एंड टैक्स गिव्स यू मिलिट्री पावर। सो by introducing the Ikta system, he had given wings to the political ambition of the Turkish nobility. क्यों? क्योंकि he had given them the wherewithal to carve out independent principalities within the empire for themselves in the future. And later on, many of the provincial nobles are going to use this power against the future sultans also. ठीक है? So in the short term, तो once again, the political situation was stabilized. Ikta system was very useful in centralizing power. In the long term, because of the association of land with provincial power, what is going to happen? Centrifugal tendencies are going to emerge. ठीक है? तो ये दो बड़े limitations भी थे इसके policy में. Write down limitations. While Iltutmish was remarkably successful in addressing the challenges before him, his policy also suffered from challenges before him, his policy also suffered from some significant limitations. Number one, suffered from some significant limitations. Write down. Number one, the Turkani-Chehalgani lacked the element of institutionalism. Full stop. Rather, it encouraged the cult of personality within the power structure. Full stop. Subpoint. After Iltutmish's death, the members of the Chalisa became virtually independent of the Sultan's authority and emerged as a major obstacle to internal stability and royal supremacy. ठीक है, एक तो ये शॉर्टकमिंग है. नंबर टू राइट. नहीं, नंबर टू main point. Number second limitation. While the Ikta system had several advantages, its biggest limitation was that it linked the ambition of the Muslim nobility with landed power. The point. In the future, this gave birth to feudal tendencies. ठीक है, ये हो गए limitations. नाउ इन कंक्लूजन क्या बोल सकते हैं? सिंपल है that while Iltutmish's policy did suffer from these limitations, his achievements could not be ignored. He actually provided a solid administrative, military, economic, and cultural foundation of the to the Delhi Sultanate, and thus he is rightly regarded as the real founder of the Sultanate. Okay, so write down conclusion. देखो, despite these limitations, Iltutmish continues to be a major figure in Sultanate history, and is rightly regarded as its real founder. Full stop. In fact, the great achievements of later sultans like Balban and Alauddin would hardly have been possible. The great achievements of later sultans like Balban and Alauddin would hardly have been possible without the contributions of Iltutmish. Contributions of Iltutmish. क्वेश्चन लिखो. Would it be correct to regard Iltutmish as the real founder of the Delhi Sultanate? तो बताओ सही है या नहीं है? बिल्कुल सही है. Will you be able to attempt this? चलिए. Any doubts?